So cute. Bye-bye.
The final boss of Final Fantasy XIII-2 is Final Fantasy XIII-2. To play it is to watch it fight itself. The insecure half that knows it shouldn't exist is throwing punches, retconning shit, retconning the meaning of the word retcon. The other side that manifested the soundtrack and the vibes that we never would have had without it is throwing cool moments in retaliation. And retaliation is exactly what this game is. Retaliation against Final Fantasy XIII. Problem is, retaliation is inherently emotional, and when you run your creative decisions through the conduit of emotion, you're asking for trouble, unless you make sure it's your own emotion, and not the emotion of the fans, many of whom really fucking hated 13. The thing about 13.2 is it didn't need to exist, but I'm glad it does, and that can apply to pretty much anything anyway. Nothing needs to exist, you and I included. I can't tell you exactly why I've always looked back at it with fondness, and forgiven it despite it cucking everything that 13 somehow managed to achieve in spite of itself. That is to say, in order to substantiate its own existence, it needed to literally erase the ending of 13 from the canon, but what it didn't need to do was make Lightning not only a runaway, but almost completely ruin her personality, make her pretentious, and disrespect all of the other incredible characters that they built up in the last game, very meticulously. But it also didn't need to have a heavy metal chocobo theme. And I don't mind that so much either, so whatever. The criticism towards any game in the 13 series is perpetually fucking inexhaustible, so there's a part of me that wants to dig deeper into the abstractions that I may have otherwise missed, to see how I really feel about the experience. Reason being, I mold at this game for a lot of the reasons that others do. So I was really surprised when the prospect of playing it again filled me with less righteous indignation and more an exciting, hopeful indignation instead. An indignation nonetheless, but the fact is, it does exist, and the 13 game became a trilogy. And I could ignore it, but the soundtrack that was born from it, and the new landscapes, the overall vibe, and the hopeful, silly atmosphere that only occasionally gives way to more serious stuff, it drew me back in like a wanky anime magnet. I find myself curious as to whether or not I love and hate this game in equal measure, but I want to go in with the right mindset and see what it does right, while being as unbiased as I can. Yeah, right. Well, I'll try. Maybe I'll come to forgive it for pissing all over 13, maybe I'll hate it a little more. I remember that despite it going very wrong at times, 13.2 took some big risks, some of which cemented the experience in a positive light for me, and in a great multitude of ways showed us all what 13 could and perhaps should have been, at least in some ways. Conversely, they also seem to forget everything that made 13 so memorable to those who appreciate what it was actually trying to do and understand it. They call it reactionary game design, and the backlash for the hyper-linearity has given way to a decidedly non-linear experience in the sequel, manifesting as a game about fucking time travel. Yeah, time travel. Alternative timelines, paradoxes, even paradox endings. To be honest, I kinda dig the time shit, but with this hyper-non-linearity comes as many problems as 13 had, but for the opposite reasons. It's all in how it's implemented. With this sudden shift in disposition, there will be consequences, and I would like to explore them. So let's embrace them. Oh, that's a fucking beautiful main menu. Yeah, the Final Fantasy XIII series keeps its tradition of pretty main menus with 13.2, with an aesthetic that runs through the whole game. I call it purple shit. I really like it. Combined with the music, it does what 13 did in essentially saying loudly and proudly, we're trying to make the game as pretty as possible. Just make it really fucking pretty. What's odd to me is that Lightning is on the right instead of our protagonist, but whatever. Difficulty options are normal and easy, but you can change it whatever, so it's all good. I like that degree of player choice. Lightning monologues now and she sounds all serious and shit. Get used to it, this is going to be a recurring theme. The opening is essentially a fever dream. We're drawn into an unknown, dark and dreary place, and the soundtrack immediately extricates itself from the warm vibes of the first game with a much darker and ethereal vibe, setting the scene as we look upon what Lightning calls Valhalla, because the lore of the game is actually important now, apparently. Yeah, all those gods and shit from 13 are actually going to be relevant, kinda. Lightning looks kinda like an action figure now. We got a hippie falling down a floaty fucking well, and Satchel from Steel Panthers laying some anime girl to rest in the sea. Lightning looking down from above might be symbolic, might not. The idea that she's out of reach but watching on, alongside her new status in the story, which will be revealed later on, it sort of lends itself to that theory of mine. I'm not like baking the big theory or anything, it's not the big theory that I'm baking. I just think it's neat if it's intended. I like video games a lot. How about you? You'd have thought they'd market Satchel from Steel Panther a little better, but he and Lightning start summoning monster armies and they just go at it. Satchel calls Lightning a warrior goddess and really seems to be enjoying himself. The English dub voice for him is Liam O'Brien. so I'm sad he didn't call Lightning a hussy, but Lightning's not quite as relatable as she used to be, since we're now in full anime territory. So I guess Goddess is appropriate. She's not a Lightning anymore, man. You ain't supposed to know anything really, except that you're Lightning, riding Odin, dodging fireballs from a giant thingy called Chaos Bahamut in a jury deathscape. I wanted to point this out immediately. The new battle UI, it is a massive improvement over 13's surprisingly simplistic one. It's certainly an indicator that this game is looking to be more stylish. Lightning's new theme is wonderful, and also it's 2011, so QuickTime events are a thing. Satchel's canon name is Caius Ballad, and he's one of the coolest, most well-written villains in the series. He's so cool, in fact, that a stupid fucking cringy ass name gets a pass from me. I'd have told him to sing me a fucking song otherwise. The hippie is Noel Kreis. Lightning's outfit is cringy cool, and she asked Noel to bring Sarah to her. Remember Sarah? Yeah, she's not Crystal Pepsi anymore. She's ascended. Lightning mentions changing the future, and then Mog appears. A good luck charm, as Lightning calls him. But I prefer floating pink poo. He can turn into a bow. Noel pisses off through a time gate or some shit, and that's the prologue. Kind of fun, to be honest. We won't get to ride a Lightning Death Horse again though, so it's goodbye to Valhalla for now, because I'm not playing the DLC. On principle, it's a mess how they implemented it, and I will summarize it later at about the 14-hour mark of the video.
You go that way. I'll go home.
Welcome to New Bodhum, home to a nice beach, a time meteor, and Sarah, who magically has her clothing change. There's a data log, but it's not a mean data log like last time, just a gentle, placid data log. Live trigger, my voice cracked. I guess it's just a RPG element that they figured would make it more immersive and fun. You can choose either one, and I choose to make Sarah omniscient. Funny that, because then she gets a vision of the future, to which you can say so via live trigger. Oh great, it's these pricks. Battle time on the beach with the pricks. Sarah calls out the lightning, but Annoying Woman illustrates how Sarah's on her own now. She'll have to become more independent. She also says Lightning's dead, which is annoying, so this game will see little sister Sarah become less dependent over time, but not yet, because after Annoying Woman gets taken out, Noel's here to help. Sarah's a ranged character as a Ravager and a Commando, but her Mog bow is a sword when you initiate combat outside of battle. It's kind of weird, but it's funny because Mog is actually a weapon. A paradigm shift tutorial is offered, but there's no need. It's like the last game, except there's a 2-person party instead of 3, and there will be a third later on. But now is now, and it ain't Pokemon yet. It will be soon, but just not yet. This whole section with the beach monster invasion has a piece of music running through that's actually really cool. It's really setting up the tone to be this spacey, otherworldly journey, and what I especially like is how they drop us in at nighttime instead of the day. Sarah and Noel have their first conversation, and Mog is given to Sarah like a Christmas present. Sarah claims him like he's a stuffed toy. Sarah saw the prologue in her dream and knows of Valhalla, further indicating she can see future-y shit. After Noel explains things to Sarah, they're like, cool, we're friends now, and Sarah believes Noel, with barely any doubt whatsoever. Sarah's sheepish, Noel's very confident, and Mog is a floaty pink poo. They make a good team. Sarah likes the monologue too, and she was falsely told by the wankers from Snow's group, Nora, that Lightning sacrificed herself to save Cocoon, putting us immediately, as the player, at variance with the ending of 13. But Sarah ain't done, and Noel confirms that Lightning's just kicking it in Valhalla. She's still around, she's just busy. I checked the wiki, and apparently this song is called Full Speed Ahead. It plays and it reminds me immediately of XIII-2, a game by Farron. They have a song called Sunshine Coastline, I think it is. It plays at the beginning of that game just as this one does here, and they both have a really cool effect in that, like no other song, they just kick you in the face with a brand new adventure. In a really fun way, but violently nonetheless. It makes you feel alive, man, even though it's the dead of night in the actual game. It's a nice little juxtaposition when usually it's the height of day in games during the first real moment of agency. The visuals and the audio of 13.2 are eerily reminiscent of when I was nocturnal as a teenager, actually. They really take me back. And I'd get that, I've been up for 40 hours, I'm gonna punch a fucking mountain. You know, that feeling? You know what I mean. Of course you do. The violin's wonderful too. It's as prominent as it was in 13 and will be still in 13.2. The guitar's upbeat and the tempo is suddenly accelerated, much like the story and our characters' motivations. It all feels like it's coming together. I like that the characters talking during normal gameplay is actually carried over from the first game, and it will give us even more of a chance to become familiar with Sarah and Noel as player agents. Sarah being somewhat new, as we didn't really see much of her in the first game, and Noel being completely new. It will facilitate this chance for us to get to know him better. New Bodhum's really pretty. I place a great deal of gravity on opening areas in games, as they really are a tone setter. I want to go all the way with a game, I always do, and there's nothing like that first playable area proper to do that. Valhalla does not count. The crystallized cocoon in the sky is like a moon, which is all well and good because I don't spot the actual one anywhere. I'll let you know if I find it. Maybe Pulse just doesn't have one. It reflects off the water just like one. Lore-wise, with Cocoon on ice literally frozen in the sky above, the remnants of the Cocoon civilization relocated to Pulse, naturally, and even jazzed up a beach to look just like Bodhum. So we're halfway to my dream of having a fully playable Bodhum. Good enough. It's as close as we'll get, really. There's also a Bodhum world in VR chat that I chill in sometimes, so it's just a really nice place. I love Bodhum so much. You'll notice that the map communicates to us for whatever reason what percentage of it we have explored. Initially, in 2018, I fell victim to my OCD and tried to 100% everything map-wise, but this time it's just there, innit? Gives you a reason to actually explore the worlds. Smart thinking. It's tied to a mechanic that we'll talk about later, so it ain't there just for the sake of it, but I will say, this is the one where I actually ended up doing it. I 100%ed all of it. The map, that is, not the entire game. That drove me insane. The game runs on random encounters now, unlike its predecessor, but it won't just jump scare you like in the old JRPG days. Now instead of that, it will give you a Mog clock. You're going to get mogged, mate. It'll provide you with a visual indicator of whether you can get a preemptive strike in, enter a battle normally, or if you're entering into a battle whether you like it or not, you're going to get jumped. Preemptive strikes are cool because they let you start a battle with haste now, and haste is really important in any game that isn't just action based, so things feel quicker, I think, and better paced in battle too. It also helps that you can just avoid field battles if you want to, but I'd advise taking enemies on as you go. Because of this, lightning fast pacing, I actually took some time to visit the data log, for fun. It even tells us why Sarah has magical powers now. But the most interesting thing to me is that the time is quantified as AF now, as in after the fall of Cocoon. So this is 003 AF. Neat shit, time travel does excite me. I still remember Season 5 of Lost and how exciting it was.
Final Fantasy XIII-2. The story so far.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Funny shit. Really breaks the immersion though. Hear the character refer to the name of the source material for the fictional story that they're in. But hey, it's a good refresher. Time shenanigans now as Cocoon disappears and a big burly bastard appears. Gog Magog is a stupid name. He's also our first battle, our first boss battle, and he almost got me because I was risky in my approach. The game was adamant that I notice and apply the sentinel role, but I like to experiment in life much more these days than I used to. I nearly died for it, but luckily it's just a game. Gog was a time anomaly, and as the time fixes, we gotta beat him up and save time. Doing so rewards us with a time fragment thingy. The first of 160 to be precise. That's a lot of time. So is 700 years actually, which is how far in the future Noel is from. Cocoon fell out of the sky in his timeline, and he shows Sarah how to interface with time gates because anime. As for the fragments, they can be acquired in numerous ways, from quests to map completion. So Noel explains to literally everyone who will listen that we need to find artifacts and open the gates of time, and Sarah wants lightning back, so she's like, sure, why not? And we have our reason to go and embark on a fun journey. It's really a full circle moment here because FF13 portrayed Lightning trying to find a way to be with Sarah, and now 13-2 shows us Sarah trying to be with Lightning. They will actually keep following this pattern. Oh, this song, New Bodhum. It's probably my favourite piece of music in the entire game. If last game was Solia Springs, then yeah, this is the best one from this one. The piano sounds have textures that intersect with one another and they're layered really, really well. They've got a lot of depth, they're really layered perfectly. And the synthesizer behind it is subtle enough that most people probably won't even realise that it's the extra little ingredient that complements the natural instruments so well. The lyrics are interesting. As usual with JRPGs, they're thematically consistent with the narrative. In this case, an emphasis on time travel, but there's a feeling of new beginnings with this one, even more than the Provenant. Was it called Run? Yes, it was. No, it was Full Speed Ahead. Fuck, they have two different... Oh, it depends which fucking video you look at. Who knows what it's called? I'll go with Full Speed Ahead. Seeing Bodhum by day gets us across pretty well as well. Little Mog's special power, other than being part Moogle, part bow, part poo, is that he glows pink when something interesting catches his eye. So we follow him to some cats, one of whom Sarah named Snow. Yeah, remember Snow? You might be wondering where he is. I was too. Keck. Turns out Sarah's a school teacher, Meanie Miss Farron. We find Lightning's knife, an artifact, and unlock a flashback of the rewrite that Time did on the 13 ending, meaning the writers. Everything's different. Lightning's holding up Cocoon along with Vanille and Fang, is what Snow says, but Snow can shut up. Thankfully Sarah remembers the real ending though, so there's a level of connection between her and the player there. The question now is what caused this timey-wimey bollocks to occur in the first place. In universe, I mean. The real reason is that the writers needed an excuse for the sequel. We need a lore-accurate explanation as well. The paradigm system. It's finally given us the option to save and load paradigm decks. It's actually happened. We can save our paradigms and we can reload them. Seems like common sense stuff, but the last game missed that feature and it missed it badly. It also gives you the option to fine-tune things just a little further with an option where you can select whether to prioritize single enemies or groups via the tune option with normal, cross and wide. I barely even touched that, at least I don't think I did. You can get by without it. Music's dynamic, by the way, and when in multi-clock mode, a more aggressive version of the theme will play. Speaking of music, here's the main battle theme for the game. I like it even more than the version in the last game, I think. It's just more exciting. If you're worried that Goody Two-Shoes Sarah is going to be boring, fear no longer, because she's actually a bossy meanie with the kids. But it's because she cares, you know? Although I can use the live trigger here to make her say scary things.
Listen up, mister, and you listen good. Start talking or your homework gets tripled.
No! Please, please, anything but that!
Not exactly making friends, are we?
It's really great. Some kid had Snow's necklace, and Sarah remembers a promise that a good friend, as she calls it, made her. Then we cut to a flashback where Snow, of all people, promises that when he returns, he'll be with Lightning. Snow believes Sarah about the timeline thingy, but he went off by himself. Sarah stayed put and didn't go after Snow, and Noel quite fairly asks why. But the thing is, the game lets you choose why. I picked because Snow told me to wait, but this unfortunately is where the destruction of Snow actually begins. It doesn't matter why Sarah stayed behind. If it did, they wouldn't ask the bloody player as much. What matters is that this is not the Snow that we know. This is not the Snow that they spent all of 13 building. This is not the Snow that we spent all of 13 watching grow. Snow has been butchered, man. He's been butchered. He's gone from dedicated to Sarah in Final Fantasy XIII to wanting to go it alone in 13-2. When the whole point of 13 mainly, anyway, was that they didn't have to go it alone because they had each other. If this was 13, he'd say, we do this together, and now he's like, fuck off, I'm bye. What is this shit? But I guess that also means that Sarah referred to Snow as a good friend. Jeez. Snow is like the only one who made a promise in the flashback, so who else could she be referring to? Either she's really pissed at him, or some localizer was, or somehow, maybe, it was actually intended by the writing team. I'll never know. What's even weirder is that you can then tell Noel about him via a live trigger, and if you select he's like a really cool guy, Sarah will get really weird about Snow. Here's an example of that.
I mean, he's my hero. Oh, and I know you're thinking no one's perfect. I know he has his flaws, and sometimes he makes me so mad, but I love that about him too. No other guy can compare to my hero.
I get it. Can we just get back to...
He has this amazing body, and his face is so handsome. He's tall and broad, and he makes me feel so safe.
Oh, and even though he's big and tough, he can be so adorable. That's my Snow. You done asking?
I'm done. Yeah, thanks for all the detail.
No, I didn't edit that in. It's actually in the game. You can check it. Player agency makes for some weird little narrative pitfalls. Noel's fast becoming interesting. His theme song is pretty, and he's the last living human. It's a hell of a hook for a character, isn't it? And he's come back in time to create a future with people in it. He's thankful to Lightning, and he's optimistic they can change things. He's seen some shit, but he ain't no doomer. He's thoughtful towards Sarah too, when he's not being sarcastic, and probably when he is. He'll prove quite wise too, which balances out well with Sarah's initially naive nature. Really good first impressions, to be honest. Noel's a character that I always overlooked before, because I was too busy missing the characters from the last game, but as a dual protagonist, he's really fun. Another good thing is that Sarah's tied up in a relationship with Snow the Runaway, so we don't want to do the typical love story thing between the two. They'll get very close, but more like a brother and sister from how I read it. It's a refreshing take on things, honestly. Fragments come with little stories, by the way. Lovely touch, it's the little things, isn't it? And Gog Magog, the unremarkable, returns to fight us again. And we get our first taste of how weird and wonderful the soundtrack is in 13-2. This track is called Limit Break. The game has literally no fear in trying new things. It's like they said, do whatever you want, just make it fun. To the devs, and here we are. You'll either find it cringy or the best thing ever. I don't think there's any in between. Personally, I love it. I think it's really fun. I like to sing along with it, badly. A chocobo appears, and we can ride them now. Don't know why I got introduced so suddenly. Did we save it? Who cares? We can choco travel now, with our Gizzle greens. Am I pronouncing that right? Is it Gizzle or is it Gissel? Who cares? Welcome to the Historia Crux. This is your time GPS, navigating you between levels. This is where you'll find each map, or level, like Africa, the Caribbean, and Portland, Oregon. It's somewhat linear at first, but you can't be given away locations, and the plot needs to happen first, but soon enough you'll be given the keys to time itself, and with it the freedom to explore just about any area you've unlocked, provided you have enough time fragment thingies. And to be honest, this place is just a breeze to navigate, despite acting as a hub housing not just levels but also different versions of these levels from different times. It's another quirk of increased player agency, being able to tackle certain things at certain times. alongside letting you access the main menu, save the game, and check your stuff while you're here. But it's very linear to start, and to start with, we are simply hopping 2 years in the future with the Brescia ruins. It's good to be back in Cocoon, but Cocoon doesn't like us much and we literally start chapter 2 with a boss battle. It's Paradox Alpha with even more awesome boss music. The wound status is introduced, which reduces maximum HP and is annoying. I've never liked it, it just pisses me off, but I guess people like a challenge and that's why it's in there. The battle's really fun though. If there's a design document for the game laying around somewhere, I bet it just says whatever's most fun, do that shit. I bet that's it. It's cinematic with the camera angle, and the QuickTime events actually make it fun too. That's right, QTEs were implemented in a fun way. I really do like them. Getting them right gives you a buff, then a stagger, then a cool thingy saying perfect. That just makes you feel good. Complete with the music, it's just really fun. It's that simple, it just makes you feel alive. The army, I'm guessing they're remnants of Psychon, are so happy with us defeating the monster that they reward us by throwing us in a cell. Life's hard on the time fixers. Also on Alyssa Zidell. This is her, she's nice to us at least. She ferries us along the land of terrible frame rates. It's the PS3 version, so the frame rate's already going to be fighting against fate itself, but they've added rain effects, and the game's really struggling now. But I believe in the game. I think you can do it. I believe in you. Noel's little gestures are really fun. Maybe in 700 AF they talked in salutes, chest punches, and finger flicks, you know? With this fun pacing though, we're given 2 more new things. The ability to change the leader at any time, and an explanation of how time gates work, with it turning out that different types of time gates require different types of artifacts. This is Chocolina, she's our time merchant. Got a quiz for you. Who do you think this is? Answers later on. I really like the Brescia ruins. The rain doesn't really put a downer on it, more so the dulcet colour palette, but the music is good and good music is good. You notice how that monster just turned into a crystal? Yeah, Pokemon. Literally. Kind of. Turns out this game does give you a third party member. In fact, it gives you a large variety of them via monster capture. Sarah actually has the power to control monsters for reasons heretofore unspecified, but Mog actually finally talks as well. Don't know why you didn't already, don't know why you waited. They also let you give the monsters names after you caught them, but unfortunately you have to pick from a pre-selected name list, so I ain't going to be fighting side by side with Pencil Dick III. It's neat though. You can give them cute little accessories too. You can add up to 3 monsters in the Paradigm pack, and those within that pack can be added to your pre-existing Paradigm setup. A good example of its use is that Kate Sith, aka Aqua, as I called him, is a medic. So it's an easy fit for the early game since we don't have that skill yet on any of our 2 party members. This is a really big part of the battle system, so it's worth taking into account the monsters' passive abilities and how they level via this screen right here. And also since they act as party members in battle, it's best to grab them when you can. Variety being a great idea. But get ready to feel bad about killing monsters now because we've humanized them somewhat. Monster capture seems random, and there's talk online that using feral links to defeat them will heighten the chance of capture. I tested it myself 3 separate times in the early game, and I can confirm it's very likely that that is the trigger. So if you really want to capture a specific Pokemon, save one of the feral links. The feral link, which is hard to say with my accent, it's a move unique to any monster that uses a quick time, and it sometimes may be good and sometimes may be shit. I love this game's use of lens flares, man. Remember when they were everywhere? Everyone hated them, but I always thought they were pretty. Actually found a way to make it make sense as well. They use it on the time gates too. Aqua is my Kate Sith. I give him an orange cap because he's my favourite little healer. I'll probably level him up loads, even though there are better options. I just love Aqua. Useless goddess. So I'll be honest, I have this thing I do where I'll see how long I can go without upgrading my stats. This time it happens in the Crystarium, and even though the normal battles were hard, it's a good way to sort of really de-rust so that any potential difficulty spikes won't hit me too hard. It's like a self-imposed gimping, you know, self-imposed difficulty level. I called it Luke difficulty. That was all well and good until Atlas one-shot in my ass the moment I tried to fight him. So let's talk the Crystarium. This is where you level Sarah, Noel, and your monsters. You do it all in the same place. And to begin with, we have access to 3 rolls for each of them, respectively, and can go down pretty much any of these 3 leveling paths, all of which contain multiple branches. Reach the end of any path and you'll be given an option. Get a stat boost for your roll, unlock a new roll, like how I gave Sarah Saboteur, because it's my favourite roll, gain a new ATP gauge, which I gave Noel, or increase your accessory capacity, because it works on a number now. I like the agency that you're given here. Once again, it seems a direct response to Final Fantasy XIII's everything. And keep in mind that having the 2 permanent members have more variety is never a bad thing, because while certain monsters do have certain roles, that doesn't mean they have the moves that you want. An early game Saboteur without D-Shell or D-Protect ain't doing nothing beyond, I guess, probably just poisoning your enemies or wounding them, which really isn't that good. It's like cheesecake without the filling. It's actually a good analogy. But thanks to that, Noel and Sarah go from level 2 to levels 20 and 21. You level quick in this game. but there's actually a lot more levels than your 99 levels. Another thing is that monsters level differently. There are item drops that you pick up in battle, all of which you can actually purchase from the Choker Lady, such as Mana Droplet and Potent Droplet, and that's actually how you level them. So it's actually worth waiting for a while to get the monster that you really like before using any of the items on them, because you never know what rank it will be, especially if you're playing the first time. Turns out, Atlas one-shotted me not because I was under-leveled, so I was actually wrong, but it was actually because I forgot to check the machine that the game told me to check. I will forever be left wondering how I would have done at level 2, had I not done that first. Just as badly, I'd wager. Oh shit, Time Labyrinth. Puzzle time. So this is a temporal rift. It's a cool name for an annoying minigame. I don't know why these exist, other than to just pad the game out. They're annoying, but we are the time fixers, so it's our duty to fix any time puzzle. They play the Mysteries Abound theme from 13, actually, so it feels serene for a bastarding puzzle, and the aesthetics are cool. Just another way to throw fragments at the player, I guess. Maybe that's just it. Oh, that is why. That must be. Oh, there you go. Figured it out. Okay, we're out. Then we beat up Atlas and fix part of time. But only a part of it. The QTE for this one is really incredible. I'm actually going to play it in full.
No!
I'm on it. Hey!
What the?
How did we get here?
No! Look out!
Move!
I think I found his weak spot. Ready?
Do it!
Wait for it.
Now!
Alyssa was worried that the grave beyond Atlas was hers, since she keeps having dreams about being killed in the Purge, back in Bodhum in Final Fantasy XIII, a game that she wasn't in. No worries, it's just her friend's grave. Happy day! We move forward in time and seek out the next pesky gate, an Eclipse artifact, opening the way for us. Sarah has one of those, I'm just tired moments, you know, one of those. And Noel straight up susses her out. Obviously it's not nothing. Is that a trope? I do love these moments between chapters though, with the introspective music playing. Sarah and Noel especially having a little time chat as they float through the Crux. Then Lightning will say something cryptic and we'll touch down in the next chapter. Speaking of which, episode 3. Crazy to think we're in chapter 3 after just about 5 hours only. This game wastes no time and just setting you on your way and letting you have fun. The pacing's fantastic. It probably would have been 3 or 4 hours actually if it wasn't just constantly stopping to take down notes as I played, which is not a good way to do an essay, and I figured that out with this very essay and the next, and I haven't done it since. With this chapter though, things are set to become a lot more condensed. Massively, with much more happening during each chapter. This is a slowing down that unfortunately won't prevent the game from going as close as it can to the edge of the tracks without falling off completely. The only way to really explain that is to just go along it. So Eclipse is the name of the track playing right now as we enter the Ashes Massif, and that's what we're experiencing, except there's still no moon. Don't know how that works. Perpetual night has descended upon Pulse, and Noel says that that's supposed to happen in a couple hundred years. So it's a paradox, and the time fixers are supposed to fix those, so we've got to get on it. Stealth, of all things. Stay in the light and the behemoths won't spawn and wreck your shit. Fun little feature, but if you're like me, you're just thinking, how long till I can come back and capture a behemoth from a Pokemon collection? It really is the same place as Final Fantasy XIII, most of it anyway, so certain areas are completely identical. And some are new, like some of the pathways. At least I think they are. Aloe-Idai. Did I get that? You cannot blame me for not knowing how to pronounce that. It's a really big difficulty spike if you ain't on easy this battle with Aloe Vera. I don't like him. Thanks to him though, I learned the hard way that buying new weapons from Chocolina and dipping in the Crystarium regularly was an absolute must. Your paradigm deck is a big thing too, as ever, so introducing ultra defensive paradigms like Combat Clinic with the 2 medics and the Sentinel is vital. To be honest, I'm unhappy with any difficulty spike in a game because it takes away from the natural flow of things and reminds me that I'm playing a game. And I do not fucking appreciate that. But on the other hand, it does force you to genuinely and earnestly engage with the mechanical parameters that the game devs have painstakingly schematized for you. I think I just prefer it when it flows more organically in lieu of a sudden ass rimming, like Aloe, what you would call him. I lost count of how many times it took, to be honest with you, but these paradigms helped me to get there, eventually, after about 7 minutes, with 1 star. 1 whole star. I'm very proud of myself. Yeah, my monsters are underleveled, and this game punishes you for that on normal mode. Normal mode is quite difficult, but if it gets too much, there's always the option to ditch your pride and knock it down easy. No shame in it, certainly not for me. The battles can be won, but if I gotta grind myself silly and spend ages on bosses when I'm mainly in this with the story, this might be the last boss fight on normal mode for me. There comes a point where the question shifts from can I do it to should I even bother? This is when I had that question thrust at me for the first time. It's nice seeing the once hostile wilds of Pulse be colonised by the nerds at the Academy. This place in particular housed a few missions in 13. So it's nice to see it again. It looks very different, but you can tell it's the same location. The Academy, by the way, are a group of scientists who are basically the main reason humanity will continue to function in this universe into the future. And their leader is this guy. It's Hope, but older. Anyone playing the game already knew that because the Historia Crux level preview played a montage of events as we selected it, and they showed Hope. Hope's the director of research now, and he's taller and seems much more confident and dependable, so we can't really ask much more for him. Our boy turned out well. A lot of people don't like him, but he's my boy. I love that boy. I'm glad he turned out well. Doesn't seem interested in Alyssa though. Hope is awesome, and really comes into his own in this game. His theme is a nice acoustic piece, just like the last game. Dude's been alone without the rest of the 13 cast for about 10 years though in universe, so that's actually really sad. He's had it really rough. In that time though, he's been an intelligent dude and really worked his way up the ranks of the Academy. Holy shit, the writers remembered Sazh exists. Let's live trigger him back into relevance for a short spell. He and Daj disappeared for a short while. There's a DLC that'll explain it for us, but I say screw the idea of locking important character moments and stories behind a paywall. I'll summarise it later as planned, but that's as far as I'll go. I'm not getting it. It's absolute bullshit. They'll do it again in 15. A few things are mentioned now. One being the Farseers, the second being the Seerus, and Noel's eyes light up when the Seerus is mentioned. A Seerus can read the future. That's worth keeping in mind when Noel mentions someone called Yule. Dude loves himself a Yule log. Things are about to get super timey. This is an Oracle drive. Noel knows of it, it records ancient stuff, apparently. It shows us lightning and caius from the prologue in Valhalla. Then Hope gifts us the shining whatever, and we can use it to travel across the time some more. It's hard to keep up with this stuff, I know. We opt to solve another paradox, basically, to find lightning. It seems like a wild goose chase at this point, but Sarah's determined and so's Noel. There's a little nudge here that side quests are kind of easy to miss, so you gotta talk to everyone with ellipses over their heads. Some have quests, most don't, and there are guides online if you can't be bothered to check, but most quests involve going to the same world in a different time, grabbing something for someone, and then coming back to the original time and giving it to them there. Easy to keep track of with the fragment section in the main menu, but this does get really complicated later on, and I had to follow a guide to get a bunch of fragments, otherwise, yeah, it would just be a mess. I'll moan about that later as well. In these early stages though, before things get way too convoluted, there is something really exciting about the way that levels work. Just as the characters don't know where a gate will take them, neither do we. So when you see Erba pop up, looking snowed in 200 years in the future, it's like, oh cool shit. In we go. Erba now is half town, half space place. This is Village and Void, the song, one of the most beautiful pieces of music in the series. And this is perhaps one of the most striking scenes visually too. I think that the suturing together of the beautiful landscape of Erba and the vast unknown of space-time is done really well here, and the song just sort of bonds them together really, really well. These puzzles are easy, and the most invasive thing about them is the pair of loading screens that separate them from the level you're in. We gotta solve a few to resolve the paradox. The artistic direction in here is some of the best I've ever seen. It's one thing to make a space place, but the use of colour is perfect and the lens flare is used very tastefully. Again, I'm slowly learning that I like lens flares a lot. Hey Bhakti, good to see you again. After naming and leveling some monsters, it dawned on me that I'd become largely endeared to my new monster friends. I worried this would happen, and it did. So I decided that all who became favourites of mine in the monster deck, I guess you could call it, would receive the honorary orange cap of cuteness to immortalise them forever, you know? Having a little mechanical bug with an orange cap debuff your enemies is a feeling unique to Final Fantasy XIII-2, and I enjoy this new dimension of gaming. Ah, it's Yule. And finally, we're introduced to our main villain properly, Mr. Caius Ballard, Satchel. Noel knows him very well, and he knows Yule. Well, not this Yule, a different one. Caius barely even monologues, he's just straight into it, says protecting the sanctity of the timeline is the most important thing, and then he gives us a hard time. This battle's tough, it really is. He hits like a train, he has regen, so you gotta keep yourself buffed and him debuffed while he's hitting you quick as hell. The key seems to be the same as in 13's hardest battles, making sure that your defensive and offensive buffs are in effect all the time, getting your health up, staggering the enemy, and then being very brave, which has a 50-50 chance of killing you. I experimented with this fight on easy mode and the difference is very noticeable. It's much easier. Normal mode nets you better drops, but if that bothers you enough, then there are ways around it. I really do enjoy the idea of adjusting difficulty whenever you please. It's an example of player agency that doesn't mess anything up narratively, it's all up to you. Despite getting his health down, we don't actually win, and Caius bests us. I hate this in games, but it's the only one so far. He's gonna end Noel, who's hesitant to fight him properly, but Yule says the timeline has changed. And Caius is like, okay, you've seen enough shit for one day, I'm taking you home. I'm going to say it now, Caius is one of the best Final Fantasy villains of all time. If I had to pick my favourite two, I'd say he's right up there with Arden. He's what I wish Sephiroth was, and he's cooler than Sephiroth too, less of the edgelord, oh I'm so powerful, Cloud, less of that bullshit, and Caius instead is just a more remarkably human villain. I don't even know if villain is right considering what we learn about him. This ain't some idiot who wants power because he thinks he's God's gift, it's just a dude trying to do right by someone he really loves. You can tell right away by how kind he is to Yul. Due in no small part to the temporal fuckery of the time fixes, a new timeline has been created. The game, in its infinite benevolence, is nice enough to give us a visual cue when this happens with an X next to a number, so it doesn't get confusing as it otherwise might have. So it's back to Yasha's Tenayeth, but it's an alternate reality, no Eclipse. It keeps things interesting by acting as another curveball. This game genuinely hates linearity, it absolutely despises it, it will avoid it at every possible turn. It's a second Yul. Noel's still looking for his Yul from his timeline, so I imagine this is annoying for the guy. Yul tells Sarah that she's the same as her. Pretty obvious what she means by that, but Sarah has to be dumb for narrative reasons. A wonderful little thing about alternate timelines isn't the picking up of items for other worlds and boring side quest stuff, but rather the chance to see different weather archetypes for worlds and different architectural layouts too. Keeps things fresh and gives you a reason to visit worlds that are largely the same. I think that the haphazard back and forth would probably get jarring without it. I imagine without it would also be more difficult to differentiate certain worlds, or versions of them. Dissolving the paradox, as we did, means that Hope's memories are now different, and technically this is a different Hope as a result. They skipped the second reunion, thankfully enough, the game, and that's another pitfall that they avoided. To be honest though, it was around this point exactly, in every playthrough that I've done, that I began to get a little exhausted with the whole thing. For every little thing that they implement to keep things fresh, they also further solidify just how far gone the story is now. And it's never coming back, they're never going to write the track, you know. They're all in on this time stuff, and it becomes crystallized for you. And with Hope now saying he wants to bring back Vanille, Fang, Lightning, and even his mother, it's hard to become emotionally locked in at this point with what Hope's saying, when we've had about 2 Yules, 2 Hopes, and who knows how many Alyssas. Luckily there's only one Sarah and one Noel, but it still doesn't really help much. With Final Fantasy XIII it was easy to become emotionally invested, but now Hope's talking about how we could be looking at the Oracle Drive's original prophecy, or it may have changed, or it may be the same, but Cocoon is going to fall into Grand Pulse in Noel's future, so we need to change it. You can follow along well enough if you pay attention, and the game will point you in a set number of directions that, even within this hyper-non-linearity, you're never going to get completely lost with. But this is emblematic of a greater issue with the game. There's such a thing as too much chaos. The risk-taking nature of the game will bring us some great stuff. It already has brought us a lot of good things with all the risks it's taken. But this is the other end of that spectrum that it paints. I suppose what I'm saying is the writer's hellbound intention to make this game as unlike 13 as humanly possible carries with it the very predictable side effect of losing a lot of the charm that 13 had. So now, even though the song from 13, The Promise, is playing, and Sarah, Noel and Hope are vowing to change the future and it's a really nice scene, I'm just thinking, you want to change the future, right? Okay. Which fucking one? We already did. I'm lost, emotionally. I suppose it's just hard to really feel anything at all when you're not sure whether what's hitting you is real and authentic and how long it's going to be about. It's what makes the game exciting, and it's also what makes it a pain in the ass to really gel with. It's a watershed moment in the game, and in my tolerance of it and its madness. Thankfully, we do have an anchor in the future fall of Cocoon. This will help the game stay on the tracks, so to speak, just about. Especially since there's a gate in Yashas that takes us somewhere named Augusta Tower 300 years in the future from a different timeline. So it's Augusta, 300 as fuck. Bloody hell, I really love the music here, and I know I say that about most places, but I really do. This one stands out even more. An AI is talking to us about distortions and paradoxes. It's angry with us for existing. Someone hacked into the system and wants us dead. So this place is a bit of a drag if you don't like standing around and activating things to do puzzles with, all while random encounters occasionally box you into a room and stress you out more. So naturally, I wanted to bang my head against a fucking desk, preferably this one. Beautiful aesthetic though, eerily reminiscent of Orphan's Cradle from 13, the final dungeon. Maybe I designed this place in another timeline. Access key 13 required. That's right, it's in another time period. Well, we'll put a note down and come back later. Non-linearity, innit? This one little trip to Augusta gave Caius about 10 more minutes with Yule, but now we're gate-bound and Yule dies. One of her does, anyway. Caius is kind of sick of it at this point, implying he's in a struggle of his own. A mysterious portal opens up and it takes us to the void beyond. The song is of the same name and it's a dark, eerie synth with a reverbed up piano. It's creepy and it's incredible. We're lost in time, essentially. Seeing Sarah's bright pink hair in this washed out place is actually quite fun. You think it would get to me, but I actually really like it. We only get to explore a fraction of this place though, for now. We will be back, but note the aesthetic, specifically the black and white tiles on the floor. We'll see a lot more of this in Lightning Returns, where its meaning may become just a little bit clearer. Noel mentions the goddess Etro, and the game hands the reins to the player a lot more now, encouraging us to seek out fragments in worlds not yet completed, which is a liberating feeling, simple enough, since there's a gate to pressure. Sarah has a time travel moment, and it's off to wherever as fuck, but we won't be here long either. It's the Sun Left Waterscape, 300 AF, and the end of the world, the fall of Cocoon, that is going to be caused by a bunch of flan. Yeah, I kind of checked out emotionally for a while after that. Jelly beans are the end of the world. Come on, give me a fucking break. Sarah has a vision and it's Snow. The first thing he does is shout, "Sarah!" What the fuck has he done to his hair? Whatever, it's good to see this idiot again. See this flan? Royal ripeness. He's easy to beat in 2 staggers, despite soaking up a bunch of elemental attacks and healing from them. The QTE finisher is really fun. The game's really changed my perspective on him. Snow's the same old self with his old theme song, but he's got a fucking minging red undershirt now. It looks like lacy lingerie. It's just another Tetsuya Nomura abomination. He's angry at Noel for bringing Sarah along, like she's not her own person or something, and an adult human being capable of making decisions, her own decisions. It's like she's 21. It's an immediate dickhead move to get angry at her about that. She's 21 years old. It makes me wish the flan ate him, whole. And his justification for leaving Sarah alone is wank as well. Lightning apparently told him to protect Cocoon, so he started time jumping too, because the flan are melting the crystal pillar, and that's how Cocoon falls, it seems. The flan melt it. He and Noel, being polar opposites, inevitably clash. I liked Snow back in 13 despite his god-awful writing at times, but this is indefensible. He was endearing back then, less so now. I chose to ask about Vanille and Fang myself, but Snow just bigs himself up saying he'll protect Cocoon 100%. Mate, when we got here, you were surrounded by 5 normal-sized flan, and you were having troubles, mate. We couldn't even beat the big one with all 3 of us. Sarah says that Snow hasn't changed a bit, but he bloody well has. Back in 13, he had endearing qualities to him. He was emotionally intelligent, he knew how to cheer people up, he considered the emotions of others, he respected their agency, he even knew when he was in way over his head. Reconciling with his overconfidence was a huge part of his character arc, and he even realised that he was just overcompensating due to the insecurities of his own. This version of Snow is a controlling partner who treats his fiancée like a child, has no sense of what he's capable of, doesn't consider the viewpoints of others, has barely any respect for anyone, and is even more overconfident, but with less reason to be. It's like they burned everything good about him and left only the things everyone hated him for. They fucking ruined Snow. I can't defend this writing now. It's obviously a case of the writers forgetting things from the first game, or new writers that just don't know. I can forgive, I guess to an extent, them rewriting certain plot elements because they had to justify a sequel, but they've inadvertently rewritten Snow's entire character arc and set him back to square one. Dog shit writing. I don't know what they were thinking. But hey, look on the positive. Sunleft is a really cool place. It's as vibrant as the first game, but it's a different map, so it's nice and new. I don't think they've reused anything here. That's actually something I can say a lot of the game. A lot of new places. They could have reused a lot more assets. The song is called Starting Over and it's very upbeat, and in certain places of the map the Sunleft theme from 13 plays. Snow fights with us in combat now, so that's a little extra damage. Not too much though. It's a function of the game to abuse your Moogle by throwing it at things, so make sure to go back to the old levels after this where you saw any floating item orbs. You can get them now. You can also throw them at people. Vanille and Fang are mentioned and their similarities to Noel, which only really hurts because I then start thinking about how cool certain character interactions and dynamics would be if 13's cast didn't get completely shafted and or relegated to short cameos here and there. The Colosseum is a brief stop with literally nothing in it but a fragment. It's for the DLC battles basically, We get a cutscene, given a fragment, that's it for now. And forever, if you're only playing the base game. I feel terrible for Farron Mog.
So cute.
The Arc-Hilt step, and I think it is Arc-Hilt. People call it Arc Light, but the Y is before the L, so I think it's Arc-Hilt. It's a nice throwback to the Grand Pulse of 13, and it looks very similar to that map too, despite technically being different. I don't believe it's the same map, it's just very, very similar. A nice little addition that the game pulls out for the first time is giving us a place with a name but not telling us what year we're in. There are primitive hunters about, but with how things have played out, it doesn't really help illuminate the matter. The game never answers this question, and I like that. I dig it. Not everything needs an answer. Worth noting, though it is rare, your AI party member that you're not using as a leader will occasionally be really stupid and not attack a staggered enemy. These red cactuars are fast travel thingies. You can't miss them. The idea seems to be that given how large this level is, they've been benevolent enough to give us fast travel, but I'm uncertain if it's that much larger than the rest of the levels. Just seems like it, maybe it is, but I think what really makes it different is that there's so many different versions of it. The uniqueness of the step is less in its sheer size and more its variety in that sense, hence the weather machine. With this, and the help of 2 levers, you can manipulate the weather in the step to one of 4 archetypes: sunny, rainy, windy, stormy. It's similar to the one in the Sun-Left Waterscape, except with more options. With each new weather system we get new monsters to catch and a different overall vibe, but more importantly we get different music too. This is really cool. Rainy weather gives you a return of the Capra Whitewood theme. When it's stormy, Will to Fight from Final Fantasy XIII, the one I jerked off about in the 13 video, and sunny weather activates Plains of Eternity, one of the standout tracks. I imagine that's the one I decided to go with here. Farron is a scary boss, but never mind him, we gotta get back to Snow. Thanks to our brief sojourn across worlds, we've shrunk Royal Ripeness. He's Mutant Tomato now, but it's all one word, so it's hard to say. Noel has a go at Snow for fighting the jelly bean alone, and Snow admits he's stupid, but did it for Fang and Vanille. Snow says they're the same, him and Noel, but last time I checked Noel wasn't as stupid. I don't know if the writers are really rolling with this Snow and Noel are the same thing, or if they want Snow to look stupid, but either way, we've resolved the paradox and Snow is off. I'd feel sad about Sarah's anguish here, but Snow kinda seems hollow now, and as a result of this, a direct result in fact, so does their relationship. Oh, I almost forgot. Snow had a Lassie brand. Don't expect this to be cleared up in the main game. It's detailed in fragments after, a sodding book. Screw that. It'll be relevant in the next game. The relevance is relative. I can't be bothered to go into it right now. It's not even that. It's not that I can't be bothered to. On principle, I just don't want to. We get some much needed downtime now as the game takes us back to the Void Beyond. And so we've gone from the constant world hopping and paradox solving to a little bit of a break. Well, break over. We've unlocked new locations. This chapter is really long, but all the while the pacing still feels very solid. It just gets overwhelming at times. Maybe it's a me thing, but I found myself actively creating my own moments of downtime by just roaming the steppe and fighting the chocobos and stuff. But then again, that was facilitated by the game, and that's how player agency works. Now's a good time to go clean up some fragments and gates in older levels, by the way, if you feel like it. With the ability Moogle Throw, it really opens up everything. What's annoying though is that feral behemoth in Massif is easier to beat now, but getting his crystal is still a bastard, and I really like my paradigm setup with Brittany, Elena and Aqua. They shall not be moved. Okay, they will be, just it will take a while. Then again, this behemoth type did really tempt me. Speaking of which, now's a good time to mention how much I came to enjoy the monster system. There are a lot of depth in not only making your own paradigm deck, but also factoring in which monsters to include based upon a multitude of factors unique to those monsters. Aqua's my medic, and even though Sarah's a good medic, having a second medic allows for combat clinic. Brittany, my lovely synergist, has a special skill that gives all party members every defensive and offensive buff at once. I don't think it lasts very long, but getting all of them at once is very good. But theoretically speaking, at this point I could make room for something else if I level up Noel in Synergy. And then you have Elena, who is my Saboteur, that I have in play during just about every offensive paradigm I have, putting D-Shell and D-Protect on enemies and making my life immensely easier. The idea was that I would eventually get rid of the Saboteur and put a Commando or a Ravager in, but I found the reduced damage didn't really matter as much because I compensated for that due to the fact that the enemies were debuffed. It evened out very well. So Commando, Ravager and Saboteur was basically my default. This is a crazy chocobo. It's angrier than most other chocobos. He'll eat your greens rapidly while you ride him. So plan where you're going to go before you hop on, or just buy a bunch of greens. He'll even eat them during cutscenes while you're turning in quests. He's a bastard. Here's something I wanted to talk about. The Crazy Chocobo song. This song got a lot of hate back in the day, but I've always loved it. I think it's really fun. It's not just a meme song, it's really catchy too. It's certainly not the main theme of the game, but I think of it personally as the official song for all the crazy shit that this game stands for. I think it's the theme of this game's creative direction, just taking risks. 13-2 is like the wild card of not just the 13 series, but the entire Final Fantasy franchise. I can't think of a more crazy game that came out in the series. You have the non-linearity, you have the time travel, two-person party, and a third thanks to monster collecting. It's probably not the first to do any of these things, but it's the first to put them all together in such a way that everyone remembers it either fondly or terribly as a direct result of the polarity relative to the rest of the Final Fantasy series. 13-2 is always trying new things. Always. It's not afraid to be weird, or silly, or unconventional. Never mind those moody bastards with the, oh, it's not serious enough. Lighten the fuck up, man. It's a game where you ride a giant fantasy chicken, and you save time from a Steel Panther member. The soundtrack is excellent, it's eclectic, it's a futuristic twist on an already unique formula established in 13 that's almost its own genre, I believe I called it. It's a discontinuity of formula, and I enjoy that. This is the clock puzzle. I hate puzzles, I have no time for them. I could learn it, I could put in the time and the effort and I could learn it, but there's zero chance of that happening because I don't find puzzles fun. It's busy work. So what to do? Well, go here. I'll put it in the description and on the screen. Pause the game, input the numbers, and you're good. Even this first one has 4 separate stages. I'll be real, it really sours the game for me. This isn't mandatory if you want to complete the main story, but a lot of the optional stuff will see you running into a lot of these later. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but the sheer repetition and boredom of these puzzles could have been replaced by so many things that are far more fun and don't make me want to headbutt my desk. Serendipity, half poor man's gold saucer and half actually kind of fun. Chocobo racing's kind of cool once you get the hang of it, but catching them is another thing entirely. There's an easy way to get a silver one in Academia later, but for now, all I got is a standard ass Chocobo. Last time I played this I had a green Chocobo. He won one race, I called him Dumplings, and then I retired with him as a winner, 100%. I tried racing the normal Chocobo, but I was so unconfident that I put a bet on a different bird. Just one gill. My bird Wendy finished last. It's also home to a shop where you can exchange any coins you've got for prizes and some slots if you're feeling masochistic. There's also a Chocobo lady called Mystic who gives us powers for passing certain thresholds of fragment amounts. She'll give you the improved Moogle throw right away, and there are certain other things you can get to, but for now that's it. And with that, chapter 3 is done. The most chaotic chapter so far, with little downtime and much to do, for better and for worse. It's a pretty disjointed chapter, and yeah, that's only going to get more hectic. Academia, 400 AF, probably the most lore-rich and interesting location in the whole game. The Academy is the de facto government now, and its leader turned out to be our boy Hope Estime. So I guess one could say that Hope is kind of the king of the world now. Weird to think about, but, you know, proud of the guy. But then I remember that he had the Academy build a man-made fal'Cie, which is stupidity beyond measure. It sends a bunch of Seath after us, because that's what fal'Cie do. They make l'Cie, who can turn into Seath. And then it's on us to run through the city with hordes upon hordes of these things trying to kill us. Fun at first, but it gets old real quick. There are so many, like tens upon tens of battles, probably hundreds by the time I got to the end of the game. I ran through here as many times as I needed to. Thing is, they're easy as hell, but that's good and bad because even though battles are quicker, you get literally 2 to 4 Crystarium points for each of them. And I haven't accidentally said 2 instead of 200, I mean 2. 2 Crystarium points, maybe 4. They're basically just superfluous fluff to add tension, but they'll often spawn right after the previous battle, so it's almost constant, which is a real drag when you're trying to explore the place and find everything. Caius appears. He's angry because he saw us die 200 years ago, apparently. We are contradictions. We're as much a paradox as the ones we're trying to solve, at least in this timeline. I guess everybody's someone's paradox. Yule tries to help us but gets struck down by a weird tentacle monster. We really are causing a paradox to occur, and so it's our fault that Yule has died. Again. The music playing is a lovely piano and vocal rendition of Noel's theme, but Yule's death really doesn't hit at all. She's barely been on screen, we know very little about her, and she dies like once a week anyway, and Noel saying for the love of Etro kind of sealed the deal on my apathy. It doesn't get much more cringe than that, to be honest. Beautiful music though. Yule says Caius wasn't here though, so whoever we saw was an imposter. That cringiness I mentioned though, it kind of dissipated when I realised that the music keeps playing as you run out of Academia through the dead bodies of the citizens there. Reminds you of the stakes. I think that much like most JRPGs with their stilted Japanese to English localization and all the weirdness that comes with it, quite naturally actually, that rhymes. Much of the heavy lifting is done by the music, so it's Augusta, again, the central information processor for the Academy. That's basically what it is. It's all AI and its functionality is akin to a supercomputer. So we're now back 200 years before that Academia shit show, and we learn that the man-made fal'Cie was constructed in order to re-levitate Cocoon. So I can kind of get Hope's thinking, but you'd think you'd try a really large construction project first. Like, just build it higher, innit? You got magic and shit. Then again, Alyssa designed and proposed it, and Hope just directed, so we can blame them both. Noah reveals a bit more about himself, saying that he and Caius were guardians protecting Search. That would be Yule. And we finally know now why he's so emotional about the two. Turns out things aren't as non-linear as they seem, and the game kicks us out of Augusta Tower because we've got to go get an access key from somewhere else. So herein lies an issue with this game. Maybe even the issue of Final Fantasy XIII-2. The lack of guidance. It's true that each game faces a perpetual struggle of attempting to find a perfect balance of player freedom while guiding the player so that things aren't necessarily annoying, convoluted, time-consuming, especially with regards to boring stuff, which every game seems to have. It's just the nature of things. But the game really falls on its ass at this point because upon learning that I couldn't advance the story, I figured, hey, it's cool, I'll just backtrack and grab whatever I missed. And for a while it was kind of fun. I went to the step, unlocked all the red cactuar fast travel thingies, I beat the 3 gigantoirs, I think I said that right. I did some quests, and then I picked off every fragment I could possibly pick off. With a guide. See, without one, I can't even fathom how much haphazard bumblefuckery would be required to advance the story. If, like me, you already spent your wild artifacts. I don't remember what I spent them on. You only get so many. I think there's 10 in the game. To figure out certain levels like the step with all its esoteric nuances would take hours upon hours. And then, to figure out who's got a quest for you in order to obtain new fragments, that would take hours too. You'd have no other recourse but to wander every level once again and search for any old NPC with ellipses above their head. And even then, who's to say they actually have one for you? Who's to say you even have a quest? And then you have the wild artifacts, which are needed to advance things and can be found all over the world in various maps, with a solid 10 of them to be found, like I said, in order to open the corresponding gates. And they are in some really hard to find places at times. This, I think, combined with the time puzzles that'll hit us later, one of which has already hit us, and the multiple versions of maps with quests carrying over timelines, turn this game into a complete mess at times. It's a mess. Not all the time. Enough of the time that at about episode 5, if you ain't looking back and forth between your game and a guide, you'd best be prepared to expand your playtime by at least 10 hours. Maybe more, maybe even 20. Long playtime is fine when the content of that quantity is one of quality, but this isn't quality, it's busy work, it's filler, and you know, I do this with every game that I play. I always think to myself, what was wrong with the developers? Could it be that this is fun to somebody? But then I think about it and I go on YouTube, I look up the guides for how to do it, and it's just people moaning like me, and I'm like, is it just people being out of touch and thinking this is fun, or just not having enough creative ideas to fill that space with something else? And I think that's the best theory I can really come up with. And the game does direct you for other things, so the lack of direction relative to the wild artifacts, a big part of advancing the game, is really odd. It tells you how many gates a level has, how many you've unlocked, and even how many fragments there are. There's even some segmentation in the fragment section, and you can search them by 2 separate means of searching. But with the wild artifacts, it's like they forgot to include a section for it, or they just chose not to. Either way, both suck. This one in Erba is actually one of the easier to find ones, funnily enough, and this one in the steppe, man, this is a piss take, and it only appears in stormy weather. So you'd have to search the weirdest places of a gigantic map where you can only run around a bit and maybe have a chocobo at some point that gets you about just a little quicker. 4 separate weather archetypes, 1 big map, search it all, top to bottom, every single time. It's some of the worst game design I've seen in a while. It is egregious. I can't even put any more words to it. It's a slog. Honestly, the fact that I'm making an essay on it is what keeps me going, because it's a creative project, you know, but if you're just playing this as a gamer, it's not fun at this point. Poor Mog though. I was trying to grab the fragment and I threw him into the fucking abyss. Sorry, Mog. These things don't count as fragments. There's no way of counting which ones you have either. It's an awful oversight that can stall your playthrough indefinitely if you don't or simply can't use a guide. I get that most people can, but you shouldn't have to. You really shouldn't. You shouldn't have to go to supplementary outside material in order to advance a game. Back in the day they did this to sell game guides. Now I don't know why the hell they're doing it. Probably just out of touch Square Enix bullshit. So the issue is not one of non-linearity, which is hard to say. Much like the linearity of 13 wasn't the issue is how it's implemented, much like 13 as well. But never mind that, this is my favourite thing of the game. A bunch of Minifan are pissing about with the cocoon pillar and sun left, and we already saved the thing, so Sarah's had enough, right? And so we round him up and we beat the shit out of him, but that ain't enough, so Sarah goes full Meanie Miss Farron on him and shouts at them all. And it actually works. I think these are definitely the moments I remember the fondest in the game, the light-hearted stuff, to balance out all the drama. It's really lovely. The Vile Peaks. I was a little worn out and ready to moan about it, you know, coming back to the Vile Peaks of all places, Brown Town. But much like Sunleft's later levels, it's mercifully short, it's to the point, and the fragments are easy to collect. It's fun, and it's self-contained, and best of all, Lightning's battle theme from 13 plays throughout the entire level. I never thought I'd say I liked the Vile Peaks than whatever came before it. At least until we're kicked out halfway through, that is, in a very 13-2 way. We need to sort things out by going to the same place in an alternate time, then come back. Really messes up the flow at this point, actually, and I'd be interested to know if I'm alone in this, or perhaps in good company. I began to feel really burned out. Like, really burned out. Odd feeling after just 20 hours or so, but after all of that, I finally felt like I was going somewhere. Sometimes too much freedom can be a prison. I felt stilted. I knew I was off to Augusta, yet again, then another Augusta, and that's why you're seeing a machine version of Alyssa from the future that doesn't know us on the screen right now, but still, the puzzly nature of the tower felt like overkill on top of what was already overkill. Overkill in me with all the timey-wimey overkill bullshit. The perfect antidote, then, would be more story. As Alyssa 2.0 sees us up the tower, we see an image of Hope and her getting attacked by monsters. The artificial intelligence they created decided they were in the way and did away with them. Seems kind of prophetic to where our real world is going, doesn't it? But this is mid-2024. I do wonder when I'll make this channel and upload these. 25, 26, maybe I'll be dead by then. Killed by AI in Augusta Tower in 2025 AF. This fucking tower, what you're observing, provided you ain't using me as like audible diazepam to help you sleep at night, and if I am, I'll try to talk a little quieter, is the monumental pain in the ass that is Augusta Tower 200 AF. The worst level in the game. Puzzles and more puzzles. Wait, no, not the worst. We have a worse one coming up later. That's Airba later, but still. Puzzles and more puzzles. And to make it even more annoying, if you get something wrong and have to backtrack, the encounter rate is about every 5 to 10 seconds while running. 5 to 10 second encounter rate, roughly, alongside a very, very narrow set of passageways that make it battle after battle after battle. And that led to me being in this place for like, I think about an hour. It's not even challenging actually, it's just tedium. It's just tedium, the video game. I always stop myself when games do things like this and I ponder what could persuade a game dev to consider the possibility that this could be in any way fun for anyone. I said it earlier, I swear I did. Maybe some do like the puzzles, but everything else taken into account, I think it's safe to say someone just didn't think very hard about just how ungodly annoying this would ultimately and inevitably end up being. Sounds kinda awful, but at this stage, half of Chapter 3 and all of Chapter 4 so far have thoroughly pissed all over the first few chapters, and I've written it off. But as the game enters its final few acts, there's time for it yet to finish strong and have 2 good thirds to outnumber the 1. My hope at the time is that it'll have a strong finish. It's not like I'm, literally tabulating and segmenting good points versus bad points, but I do kind of do that in my head. I don't know if that counts. I get a little autistic with regards to how much time I've allocated in my life to stupid fucking dungeons and JRPGs. Forgive me. The 500th Yule gives us a cool time thingy and gives us some lore about herself and Caius. Yule has the eyes of Etro, very important thing. They allow her to see into the future, and Caius is literally immortal. It's because he has the heart of chaos, which is also a cool thing. Chaos will become more and more relevant now, right up until it literally manifests lightning returns from inside itself. Chaos is the ocean in Valhalla. If you're after like a visual representation to tide you over, Chaos, funnily enough, was a gift from the goddess Etro, granted to humankind in the form of hearts, which was localized poorly, apparently. Alright, let's quote the wiki. Hearts, Kokoro, also incorrectly localized as souls and spirits, are an integral part of the Fabula Nova Chrysalis Final Fantasy subseries. Fancy. Blue. Read it. It is a more specified concept of a soul, whereas soul is the essence of humanity. Heart is the essence of a person, giving a person their individuality. Gifted to humanity by the goddess Etro, they act as a balancing force in the universe. Hearts are the means through which humans have the strength to challenge both the fal'Cie and the deities. So here's an accurate localization for all the weird stuff. Death means fuck all in a JRPG. There's your localization. Someone dies and the soul, spirit, heart, whatever the fuck the writers decide to go with, means that they can play that card at any point, usually in the form of a miracle. This tactic is most regularly used to bring back dead characters, manifest miracles when the writers have written themselves into a corner, and to sound cool and poetic when they otherwise don't know how else to fill in the scene. I like that Caius cries here. He's really human for an immortal Steel Panther member. We fight off the proto-fal'Cie that ambushed us on the way up the elevator. I hate elevators. I had to go up one recently. Still not over it. And eventually Sarah comes up with a plan. It's just like the Flan plan. Just shout at fuckers. She shouts at Hope from across the causal lines and breaches time itself just to tell him not to build this stupid fucking tower. And it works. And as a result, we have unlocked a newer, shinier, sunnier academia. Sarah is now 2 for nothing in her ability to shout her way to victory, meaning Miss Farron's going to win us the title. I said a little earlier that Augusta was the worst level of the game, 200 AF that is, but then I remembered it as competition. Here is that competition, it's Airba 300 AF. It's special because it starts with the Solia Springs theme from 13, which is my favourite of all. I talked about that enough in the last video. But what isn't my favourite at all is 9 time puzzles. 9 time puzzles in this level. It's full of fragments, and it exists to pad out the fragment collection. It's that simple. It's got a nice soundtrack, it's a nice place, but 9 puzzles for 9 fragments, puzzle after puzzle after puzzle. It's not difficult, it's just tiresome. It's also annoying because we learn a bit about Mog and Valhalla, and how there's some strong connection between the two, but it's locked behind this busy work bullshit. But I can't avoid the main story anymore. I've been putting it off because there's more to write down when things get story heavy, but unless I want to spend an hour in Erba trying to catch a white chocobo, I'm off now to Academia 400 AF, the alternate version, the one that I mentioned.
This is what you wanted to see, wasn't it? Welcome to the future, you say.
It's an incredible transformation from the kid we knew in 13. Still, something always felt difficult about it to me, and now that I've really analysed the game, I've figured out what that is, and why it doesn't hit me quite so much, and it translates to every other emotional inquiry that the game threw at me. You never know if it's even the true timeline. I mean, how many have we seen now? How many paradoxes? How many versions of the same people? Everything just feels so disjointed from reality, because the reality that the game presents in the form of its ever-illusionary interpretation of its own canon is in perpetual motion as we manipulate it. We saw Hope and Alessa die in another timeline, yet here they are right as rain. You know what I mean? It's when so many things are uncertain and you build your narrative on the uncertain. I think this is just a very natural conclusion and consequence of that, which funnily enough is kind of analogous to how within the story Sarah and Noel's time fixie bullshit has its own set of consequences. And from within this maelstrom of time fuckery, I think a meta commentary is born, one that I'm spectacularly fucking certain is in not any way intentional. Analysing fiction is fun. But holy shit, is Academia a standout level for any JRPG? The song is gorgeous too. I'm listening to a slowed version right now. The guitar is laced with this chorus effect, which is essentially modulation, and it's fitting now since we're looking at a completely modified and transformed version of the city. People, places, vibrancy in the light of day. It's a far cry from the version we were in earlier. The string instruments come in as well to complement the guitar, and it's another Hamauzu masterclass, honestly. You can't write bad music. There's so much soul in it, man. It really captures the new age hopefulness and the spirit of fantasy and adventure games. It's very similar to Eden from 13. It's almost cyberpunk, at least in its futurism, and its verticality as well, and its imagery is really wonderful and the colours really pop. Hey, I got Vile Peaks. My OCD can rest. A dark form of lightning's Eidolon, Odin, is behind the weirdness of the peaks, and lightning secretly cheers us on from a distance in a pensive, stoic way. It was at this point though that I realised just how little I connect with Lightning, which is such a shame with how likeable she was in 13. Eventually. Please banish this twisted reflection back into the darkness. Speak normal for fuck's sake. You used to speak like a normal person, Lightning. I know you're special now and we'll see more of that soon, but Christ, did they write her as pretentious as possible? I missed the relatable Lightning. I do like Lightning's speech here though. It's less pretentious and more to the point.
I find comfort in the fact that people can disappear but still continue to live on in others' memories. So Sarah, if you keep me in your thoughts, one day I am certain I will find my way home again.
You will.
Oh, what?
Oh, it's nothing. I just thought I heard Lightning's voice. I know it's probably just all in my head.
It's actually Sazh. Holy shit. And what the hell is this? He says he can't hear us, so it's like a projection or something. He gives us a little pep talk, tells us he's gambling in desperation. Maybe he's a Genshin Impact player. He gives us a fragment and just vanishes back into the ether. God, it's underwhelming. Sarah tells Noel about his relevance, that being Sazh, in the last game. And it's like, that's it? That's all we get? The problem with how they shafted Sazh and some others is not that they just shafted prior characters. It's that those prior characters that were shafted are some of the best written characters I've ever seen in the game. Sazh is a prime example of that, and so the way he's been relegated to the sidelines makes me genuinely sad. It really does, but hey, that's life. We get another Lightning speech too. She says she's in Valhalla. I guess this is like a recording played via some magic-y space-time thingy. She says she misses Sarah. She may be a deviant art user now, but she's much more open with her emotions. Silver linings. The inside of Academia's main building, since we're back, is brilliant, and that's not just because you can throw Mog into this thing for a free silver chocobo, though absolutely do that. Hope got here by inventing a time capsule. Shit, good enough for me. If If I cared about the particulars, I'd have gone insane by now. He's building an artificial shell for the new cocoon this time. Instead of using a fal'C, he is doing it with human hands. As a result of that though, we need to collect graviton cores to power this new man-made cocoon. We already have 3, since I've been going around doing everything I can at this point. But you need 5, and we're grabbing all 7 anyway. Funny thing is, by this point I realised I'd gotten 100 fragments, and I surprised myself, but that's what happens when you get into the flow of the game. I will say, to give the game its due, it has a way of pulling you in, for sure. Problem was the use of a guide, though, to feel as though I could pull it off in under 100 hours. 30 hours so far in my case, with the guide, and that's the drawback. After collecting all 7 cores, I realised something. The 9 puzzles in Erber 300AF were just the prelude to another 9 puzzles in Erber 400AF. I'm not kidding, it is a carbon copy of the first, except it's snowy, so it looks nice. This stuff is optional now, but that's an excuse I'm frankly tired of seeing, and there are 100 other things that you could put here instead, just to make the process more fun. You could have a battle gauntlet, you could have a chocobo racing minigame, you can invent something like Blitzball, but not shit. Maybe like chocobo racing, but you can actually control the thing. You know, sort of like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Maybe a throw the Mog in the hole challenge. Many ideas. Instead we get this, but we do learn about Mog's past here, and how he... Is he a he? I think he is. How he got lost in time. And lost his memories too, and there's a funny scene where Mog shows more character than ever before, but it's all locked behind this insidiously tedious gauntlet of puzzles. But we're done, and there's a watershed moment here symbolised by the game's insistence that we be ready to click the "yes, I'm extra sure I want to do this" button to advance into the endgame. It's not so much a point of no return, but there is some difficult stuff coming up, so I do appreciate that. That's the kind of guidance that's good in the game. It's interesting to me that Pulse started as this grand wilderness as we first saw it, and yet here we are in the sequel with a Pulse that's as advanced as Cocoon ever was. But it is 400 years after the end of 13 now. Hope we'll be there in 100 years to meet us, to raise the new Cocoon into the sky, because we ain't the only time travelers. So it's nice to see this place really come along and evolve the more we visit it. Hoping Alyssa come and see us through the gate in a nice scene, but Alyssa smiles deviously. Ooh. The handbrake of the Historia Crux apparently snaps and we're separated from one another. We go flying off in different directions. Alyssa's voice bids us farewell, and she says that she doesn't exist in the future we're trying to build. So yeah, those dreams of her dying were the true timeline. She was right to be afraid of that. Because of that, she betrayed us and helped caius. Alyssa's a sad story, man. The Void Beyond. The uncertainty of time travel mixed with the static they use here really excites me, and the music in the Beyond is always ethereal in a dark ambient style that gets really dark in tonality as well. We're Sarah now, perambulating through the void as a mirage of Null is killed by caius, and this sequence is really striking. Mog's with us, but he's translucent, the colours are monochrome, the visuals are distorted, and the way is unclear. I enjoy how creepy this game can get, and the juxtaposition that it builds between this paradigm and the more good and light-hearted moments is really well done. Doesn't feel like a clash, you know. As we make our way through the Beyond, we meet about 500 more Yules, or maybe 5 or so. One tells us of the goddess Etro, and how lightning is standing guard over her temple. Etro is the one allowing us to change time. Etro, as it happened, for a little bit of lore, is the one who helped us at the end of FF13, releasing us from our crystal prisons. She took pity on us, but she's fading away, and as she loses her power, whatever separates the world of man from the unseen realm of chaos and Valhalla, and all this cool stuff, is fading too. I guess you could think of it like a magical partition. On screen now is probably the most relevant lore you'll see all game in relation to Lightning Returns, which is coming up next in the series and will finish off the trilogy. The names you're seeing now are the deities of the Fabula Nova Chrysalis series that Final Fantasy XIII's trilogy falls under. It's like an umbrella term for the mythos that a series of games would be born under. That even includes Final Fantasy Type 0 and what would have been Versus 13, but later became Final Fantasy 15. They're all under this Fabula Nova thing. The universes are unconnected, but the terminology they use and the thematic constructs are borderline identical. It feels like there was an attempt to make something akin to Final Fantasy VII's compilation series, but to go much deeper with the lore, but ultimately it would burn out without much fanfare as complications arose, you know, with the franchise. When it comes down to it though, despite my wish to leave the hilariously complex lore for the next game, you really can sum it up by saying Boona has mummy issues. You really can. That's about it. That's Final Fantasy XIII. Boona has mummy issues. therefore everything. That might not make sense yet, but he is the almighty god of this series, and that is his most defining characteristic. Back to this. It's Caius, here to defy us. He claims Null is basically in an afterlife, but there's definitely smoke and mirrors going on. Caius becomes even more relatable and hits on something that bugged me also. Each time we change time to suit our own needs, we bring tragedy upon others. Alyssa is a good but unnamed example in this scene, but Yule is the one he wants to save. So in terms of game lore, XIII retconned the timeline to create the FF13 ending we knew, but in real life, it's very likely the opposite happened, that this is the real retcon by the writers in order to justify a sequel. The basis for this theory of mine is that the vast majority of this stuff had literally no presence in 13. Certain lore aspects were mentioned, but there was no foreshadowing for any of this. It's highly likely, I think, that they obfuscated the retcon by claiming the ending we saw was in fact an in-universe retcon by a powerful deity, all in order to justify a sequel for a game that, despite its criticism, sold really, really well, and so the company saw dollar signs. That's my theory, anyway. Satchel hits us with his best lyrics, and seemingly kills us. Obviously not, it's time for a dream sequence. Useful one though, it's time to revisit New Bodhum. Yeah, it's a dreamscape, an ideal world where Sarah married Snow, and Lightning is here with us. She offers us an end to the game. It's a dream world, but the game gives you the option, so let's choose yes, and unlock the first paradox ending. It's funny though, Sarah talks about how this dream world is such a great place, but meanwhile the sky is dark and bleak, no doubt representing the reality of the real world she's trying to hide from. It's like she's so blind to the euphoria of this world that has everyone but Noel in it, and she lives happily ever after, except she left Noel behind and can't remember him properly. It's a really bad ending, it feels weird and anticlimactic, and that's the point, it's perfectly done. But, you know, back in reality, we deny Fake Lightning's offer. I guess the implication is that it would have all been for nothing. For the first time in the game actually, Fabula Nova Crystarium plays, and I'm glad they waited as long as they did, because now it hits much harder. This is the kind of emotional resonance that the first game had, and something that's been sorely missing in this game, actually. Sacrificed on the altar of multiple timelines and versions of the same people. It helps finally ground the story by providing a solid link to the prior game. It speaks a lot to the power of the soundtrack when the main thing that links the sequel to the prequel isn't a story element or a character but a song. It helps me to feel a strong sense of connection to the series again personally, when it felt like the trilogy was very much losing its identity at certain points. At its core, FF13's entire trilogy is about fighting fate with the help of people close to you. So you really can't be that reductive about it and not suffer for it. And for that reason, all it takes is a song to sort of bring it back. Vanille's here, finally. It's the real her but inside a dream. Yeah, I know. She's sleeping in the pillow and Sarah's dream world is a dream too. So we're just having our dreams shake hands. Fang's here too, and they're here to wake us up. Once again, 13 is simple outside of all the lore and the terminology, people fighting fate. In a way it's annoying, to be honest, this clear-cut lack of distinction between dreams and reality. On the one hand, it seems a cop-out by most JRPG writers, so they can just go all in with dream sequences and have them have narrative consequences, which can often have negative consequences, as it does here too, since the only thing grounding this story, given all the timelines and different versions of people, is the fate and friendship thing that I won't shut up about. Well, that's completely gone now, so the only thing grounding us now is that ethos. Let's hope it holds out, because we gotta go wake up the real Noel now. We're gonna do that in the Dying World. The Dying World is really sensational, actually, for a world that is barren completely. I think the bleakness of everything is carried by the music, which plays a rendition of Noel's theme, with some lyrics about being the last of his kind in the world. And we can finally explore how awful that was for him. The dimly lit background of the red sky is a nice touch too. With this dream world, we see glimpses of Noel and Caius and Yule, and how close they were, how the two were kinda guardians for Yule, and how nice of a person Yule was to them, and why they loved her so much. Caius says that there can only be one guardian, and that Noel must kill him to do so. Truth is that since Caius has the heart of chaos, his death means the death of the goddess. Noel didn't want that, and he offers Caius an alternative, but Caius is like, yeah, fuck that, and charges Noel, defeating him in combat really easily. He goes to Valhalla to kill the goddess, unleash the chaos, and warp and destroy the timelines, and essentially set Yule free. Then she dies in Noel's arms. God, it's grim, innit? Sarah stops Noel from ascending into the afterlife because anime, and they float together for a while because anime. Sarah's come to save Noel from his dreamscape and giving up, and here comes the cringiest line in the entire game.
No one else I can count on but you.
We have the same hope, the same road to travel. We will change the future.
Lame. Wait, it's Godmagog again, is it? Him again. Okay. Well, Noel finally says it. You'll die because she could see the timeline. Sarah can also see the timeline. Her eyes also sometimes have a peculiar shape in them. And the more Sarah sees and changes with time, the more likely it is that Noel says she will die. Sarah talks Noel into coming with her anyway, and we can finally see the dying world in daylight. Fucking depressing, isn't it? Really nice though, I like it. New Bodhum, 700 AF. I don't think it's the real New Bodhum anymore, it's more like old Bodhum. I love it, it's so vibrant and exciting in the beginning, and now we have this entropic version where all the sea is dried up. It's beautiful, you know, in a sad way. Real lightning? Oh shit, it really is. Well, instead of giving Sarah a hug, real lightning does show up, but she gives us a big bag of lore drops. She's baking the big theory. She details the ending of 13 and what exactly happened to her. She was pulled through the Historia Crux without a handbrake, and literally written out of history. Waking up in the shores of Valhalla, she made her way to Etro's giant chair of godliness and saw all of time. The CGI is incredible here. Basically every CGI is incredible, that's kind of redundant to say at this point. Anyway, Etro used her goddess powers to turn Grumpy into magical girl lightning, complete with a costume that is antithetical to her personality for fan service. Etro is either based or Akuma. It's basically a swimsuit with some plate armor. Magical girl lightning. She tells us Caius wants to bring down Cocoon to flood the world with chaos by killing so many people at once. As a result, our world would become like Valhalla, no new life, no death, and no time. Just inertiatic completely. Magical girl Lightning has been fighting Caius in Valhalla on a loop so she can protect Etro. That's what we saw at the beginning of the game. So we got to go to 500 AF and stop Caius from eating Cocoon or whatever it is it wants to do to it. The time fixers need to protect the timeline. A registered trademark of the time fixers. Lightning seems oddly cold as she leaves. No goodbye, no hug, just peace fuckers. It's another... Can't she at least give Sarah a hug? Give your sister a hug, Lightning, what the just give her a hug. With that though, I can see a perfect little window I'd like to squeeze through regarding character discussion. Lightning's dramatic change in design and personality, her absence, her personality that they methodically and spectacularly built up in 13, is now completely subdued, or like 95% submerged underwater. She was this cool, composed, but vulnerable character who dressed like a normal person. Now she's this barely relatable goddess angel woman in a magical girl outfit. For Kumas, where's Smiley Lightning? Where's the cape? When's she gonna slap someone? Now she really is grumpy. No, she's not even grumpy, she's less than grumpy. She's empty. At least compared to 13, her stark and sudden shift in personality and unrealistically fast adaptation to suddenly becoming a goddess's servant in a land of literal chaos and nothingness is so off-putting to me. Like, it immediately makes me want to hate everything about everything. In 13 she was hyper-relatable, but now it's like, who is this woman? What does she do with Smiley? Well, it's Magical Girl Lightning from this point on, and she's too cool for us now. It's just too stark and too sudden. It sucks. On the topic of characters though I briefly touched on it, I like to segment it and talk a little more about in-depth character discussion for just a bit. Both the party dynamics and the individual characters. Sarah. So we've talked a bit about Lightning, and Sarah I think as a result needs to be looked at in comparison to Lightning and separately on her own merit, because this game wouldn't exist without 13, but it's also just one game. It's safe to say I've enjoyed Sarah's mix of silliness and seriousness, and I like how driven she is. It's fun to watch, and I think that she's the perfect foil to Noel's often stoic personality. I'm reluctant to compare her to Lightning from 13, but since I have to, I'd say that Lightning's journey was far more rewarding for me, seeing her go from cold and isolated to warm and accepting, but not changing too much, and that being partly because of Sarah. And so Sarah's journey of going from naive and driven to purposeful, despite being a rewarding experience, doesn't quite hit the mark like Grumpy's arc did in the last game. Once again, compared to what came before, it comes up short, but what's important to note is that it is its own thing, and it's good enough. And some games simply are just good enough. That's it, just good enough. Same with characters like Sarah here. I think that sentence is analogous to the game as a whole. It's just good enough. That's it. Sarah has the inquisitive qualities to carry the game, and she has less help doing the heavy lifting than Lightning did, with much less permanent party members, but she's written well enough to carry her own emphasis while maintaining a likability that's important for a protagonist. Once again, it's good enough on the whole, which rhymes with Noel. Noel's an odd one. Good enough, in much the same way Sarah is, but dropped into a game that shafted the big characters from before that they built up so well, so Noel has really big shoes to fill. He's likable enough and has some funny moments, and he has an interesting backstory that we relive ourselves. Just did it actually. I thought there was something lacking about him initially, but I was comparing him to the old cast, you know, more reserved, not quite as fun as Vanille, not as dramatic as Lightning, certainly not as likable as a Sazh, but still alright. But I guess that's the issue, they shafted Sazh, Fang and Lightning for someone who's alright and good enough. Hope's kind of boring and dull now, I didn't want to say that. He's nice, he's dependable, and he's good to see around, but there's no real excitement when he turns up, apart from a bit later when he'll get a really cool moment. But he could still be fun, right? He was really fun in 13, when he wasn't being moody, and sometimes when he was being moody. That was kind of funny in its own way. Even then he was sort of entertaining, but now it's like he's too sensible. He's grown too much, I think. He has some cool moments, he's just missing something. I don't know what it is, but I feel its absence. I can feel it, there's a gaping void in Hope. We don't see a whole lot of him through the game, so maybe that's it. Certainly not enough screen time to showcase any other personality traits. This will only get worse, and he'll get absolutely destroyed as a character in the next game. It's only going downhill for Hope. It's really bad actually, but for now he's here, and like Sarah and Noel, he's good enough and alright. Vanille and Fang, they are painfully absent for about 99% of the game, but as stated earlier, that one makes sense. They are holding up Cocoon's crystal pillar. The one scene they turn up in is one of my favourite scenes, and Fang's personality immediately puts everyone else to shame. Fang is just a cut above, man, and even Vanille was missed. Leaving out Fang, it's like leaving out Sazh. And even though I talked about Sazh already, I'll throw him in again and just say, what were you doing leaving him out? What are you doing? Two of the best characters in a video game. Oh, fucking, why am I angry about this? It was over fucking 10 years ago. Oh, it's because I know I've got to play fucking Lightning Returns and I'll get more angry about it. Snow. Now Snow has been almost completely ruined, and it's a shadow of his former self, because they retconned whatever sense Lightning punched into him in 13. Twice. There isn't much else to say about him except that, like I said in Sunlight earlier, about every lesson he's learned in 13 decided to fall out of his brain, or his ass, so it's difficult to feel any goodwill towards the guy. And then you got a stupid haircut. Yule is an interesting addition, but due to the many versions of her, I find it impossible to really get attached in any discernible way. When another Yule dies, I feel nothing at all really. Caius though. Caius I like. Really cool character. Would have liked to have seen more of him, but I'm glad I didn't because I imagine people wanted to see more of Sephiroth in the Final Fantasy VII remake, and then he turned into one of the most boring, pretentious, monotone and predictable and bland villains that I have ever seen in a game. And even hardcore fans are annoyed with him at this point. It's why I prefer Caius over Sephi, to be honest, because Caius is kept in the cupboard when he's not needed. You don't need a Caius, put him back in the cupboard. Wrap him up, make sure he stays fresh. The writers were not afraid to put him back in his Caius cupboard when he wasn't needed. Sometimes for like extended stretches. The foreboding nature of his existence and how it's referenced by our main characters is more than enough to set the mind racing with theories on where he is and what he's up to at any given time. And you don't always need to see this for yourself. Leaving things to the imagination can be a good thing sometimes. This is one of those times for sure. He's a dude that I can never really necessarily call evil, but he is willing to do bad things in order to help the people he cares about. In that sense, he's similar to Sarah and Noel, who put their own desires before the desires of others to fix what they consider to be the true timeline. Caius does that too. He's willing to fight anyone, and his overpowered nature comes up more in the story than during gameplay. And there's a few times he kicks our ass, but it's necessary to illustrate what the story's already telling us. But what makes him, for me, one of the most interesting and underrated Final Fantasy villains is that he very much wants to be killed. Now we had that in Final Fantasy XIII, but Barthandelus was fucking boring, so it didn't really hit. He didn't really have a good reason for it, it was kind of one-dimensional. We'll get onto that as we go, with Caius' motivation to die, but yeah, he puts Barthandelus to shame. If we had Caius in Final Fantasy XIII, holy shit, that would have been good. So I guess to summarise, I just can't help but keep coming back to the old cast members. And I finally realised why that is. It's the wasted potential and how it manifests. If this sequel had Sazh as a main character alongside Sarah, it would be insanely interesting to me. Same with a grown-up Hope. And oh man, imagine Fang and Sazh. Holy shit. Oh, god damn it. You get excited for these things, but then you realise it couldn't ever happen unless you write a fan fiction. It's like, mate, I'm writing fucking 20,000 word essays about games and I've time to write fan fiction. Wait, where was I? Yeah, same with a grown-up Hope. He could have been the dual protagonist even alongside Sarah, and Noel could have just been a side character like Hope is. Instead, we get an absent Sazh, a watered-down Hope that has a few different versions, none of which I can fully connect with, right up until the end actually, when I know I'm looking at the canon version of Hope that's about to undergo a shit deal in Final Fantasy Lightning Returns. and not some dumbass who built a man-made fal'Cie and died for it in a timeline that we successfully erased. Honestly, Sazh would have been the perfect dual protagonist for Sarah. They wouldn't dare, obviously, because he's not a teenager, and it's Japan, right? But they already don't have to worry about stupid forced romance between the two, what with Snow existing. And do you remember Sazh's dynamic with Vanille, and how versatile he was as a character, like the father-daughter dynamic? It was perfect. It would have worked perfectly for Sarah as well. That can work. Look at The Last of Us. Well, Sarah's a bit older, but you know what I mean. Add Hope to the mix and maybe keep Sarah as the main character, and even add Noel so he has less scrutiny on him if you want. There are so many things they could have done, and while I do think Noel and Sarah's dynamic is a good one, and that they're fun to watch interact, with Noel being more serious and Sarah occasionally bringing the silliness out of him, I can't ever help but wonder how much better it would have been with Sazh and Hope, for instance, to name a few, as a party member for a main character Sarah. 13 had 6 party members, so it's doable. It's absolutely doable. So essentially Noel was screwed from the beginning because he had impossibly large shoes to fill with Lightning's disappearance, and with the exclusion of prominent roles for Sazh, Hope and the others. Noel is destined to be compared to them by everyone, and me in my head. Noel and Sarah are alright, but the decision to throw away what they built in 13 will always baffle me. Maybe Sazh is too old and unrelatable for the Japanese audience. I know how that demographic works, but what about Hope? Oh wait, I didn't mention Snow as a permanent party member. They really soured me on that guy.
Leap that wall, if you're so great. Big deal. Up and over! Wait.
So it's back in academia, but 500 AF this time, and I'd like to recognise just how brilliant the art direction is in this game by highlighting the episode number and name appearing on the architecture right there. It's always the little things. So it's the finale, and Hope's cocoon project is set to take off. Chaos from Valhalla is starting to leak into our world, and so floating blocks. I don't know how that works. What's of interest to me are the similarities though to Orphan's Cradle from Final Fantasy XIII, which are very noticeable. The music's very pensive for a final dungeon, and the sense of dread really kicks in too. It's worth mentioning that due to my due diligence of looking up guides to do much of the work for me, we now have a lot of cool fragment skills, one of which gives us more crystal points after a battle. I'm not using the abbreviation, and another that increases the chances of catching a good Pokemon. But we also grab the anti-gravity jump, which will be very useful in this final dungeon, which I hate. JRPGs are by design very self-indulgent. So are these essays. Maybe they're born from that. I know this. Final dungeons are long-winded, full of battles, and often like to include puzzles to make it even more annoying. And that's Academia 500 AF. I use a guide to get through the dungeon and 100% the map as quick as possible. I think at one point that I screwed it up, but it turned out I was okay. And yeah, I just wanted to get toward the end of a long game at this point. It looks incredible though, and it's monumentally unique even for a JRPG where weirdness is normality. Must be time for the final battle, right? Hope has his cool moment now and comes to help us as the leader of the academy. And the writers have remembered that Sazh exists. He's finally here in person. Little dodge too. It's one of those everyone coming together scenes that were so prevalent in the last game, and immediately I start to feel like I'm back in it. Final Fantasy XIII-2 is at its best when it feels the most like Final Fantasy XIII. Sazh flies us up to Caius, who's commandeered a flying thing, and it's a fight in the sky with, that says Chaos Bahamut, but I read it as Cheese Bahamut, so he's Cheese Bahamut now, who's impossibly cool, Cheesy Bahamut. No, it's Bahamut. Fuck, Cheese Bahamut, I always get it wrong. Caius for real now, and for a while anyway, he knocks us off. And it's good to see Hope in the thick of the action and not just creating holographic meatloaf at the academy. We enter a portal to Valhalla after a fight in the sky, and Odin helps us out, helps us descend, and it's time for the actual final battle with Satchel. But obviously he's not dead. Nice to see Noel finally get the better of Caius though. Hello again to Lightning, thanks for the assist. Once again we're between worlds in some liminal space, couldn't tell you where. Sea of Chaos something or other, writers, who fucking cares. So these 3 assholes, they're tough, but I got carried away collecting fragments and got myself accidentally overleveled, so it was kind of meh this time. Thankfully, actually, because I was kind of burned out. Stylistically, they're the coolest things in the game, enemy-wise. Guardit Bahamut, Amber Bahamut, and Jet Bahamut. If you're not leveled properly, these guys will fuck you up, and this is when you'll realise you're not leveled properly. Caius is bested, but he's still not dead enough for his liking, but Noel won't be provoked into killing him. And then Caius is like, yeah, I killed Lightning, you pricks. Lightning's dead. And Noel's like, nah mate, we ain't falling for that. So with one last QTE, we show mercy, and Noel spares him. And then the most bullshit thing I have ever seen. Caius grabs Noel's sword and plunges it into his own chest. What a fucking cop-out. So we resolve the final paradox, and Sarah feels great. Great, it's just, could Caius not have just done that to himself all along? Whatever. The happy future. Hope raises Cocoon. Alyssa literally doesn't exist anymore, we'll address that with the paradox endings in a bit, and the happy, terribly chosen and unfitting music plays as the older, shittier Cocoon comes crashing down into Pulse. It's fine, we built a new one. Weird though, seeing Cocoon come down, knowing Fang and Vanille have been collected in their Crystal Pepsi form by Hope in the Academy. Once again, they don't know how to do music at the end. They get it right in Lightning Returns finally, but yeah, it's just way too uplifting. But hey, Fang and Vanille kept that thing in the sky for 500 years and they deserve a good rest. Weird though, considering they already spent centuries dreaming a crystal sleep. The real life applications of that are devastatingly boring, I have to imagine. Hope has christened our new Cocoon, our Ark, Boonavelza. That's going to be unsettling in the next game. That nickname is literally going to torture him. No one's going to get that. Sarah and Noel descend from the heavens and all looks well. The CGI is lovely, as always, and it's a happy ending. The gates are closed and the timeline is fixed. All is well. Happy ending. Until Sarah's eyes go funny and she fucking dies. Just legit, right there, on the spot. It's almost horrific. They told us it would happen, made us think it wasn't going to happen for some reason, and then still did it. I kind of admire their balls, the writers. Even Mog's light goes out like Charmander's tail or something. And then we remember Etro dies when Caius dies, so since Noel killed Caius, kind of, we've also killed the goddess. We hear the bells of Valhalla chime and chaos seeps in as Noel and Hope realize how fucked we all are. Cocoon is no more, Hope's arc is useless now, and Pulse merges with the chaos. And then, to top it all off, we cut to the most insidious ending I've ever seen in a game.
When the goddess dies, the chaos of Valhalla is unleashed. The chaos has the power to warp the timeline and destroy the past.
I don't know.
Holy shit. So where the hell was Sazh, and why is Lightning a statue now? Good questions. Well, there was a lot of story DLC because the AAA gaming market was just starting to figure out that scummy business practices was something gamers could be eased into. Sazh's DLC, a gambling adventure that reduces our beloved best boy into a time-hopping gambler stuck in serendipity in order to justify writing about the majority of the story. It's great to see Sazh again, but it just makes it hurt all the more that he was so absent in the main game, and it immediately brought me back to the overbearing charm of 13, and consequently how much of it 13-2 lacked. I'll never get over it. The Chocobo chick returns too though, which is lovely, the most noteworthy thing being Chocolina's true identity. I said I'd say what it was earlier, and the answer is the Chocobo chick from Final Fantasy XIII. That's actually cute, but also terribly disconcerting when you realise that that cute little Chocobo chick is also this. Chocobo chick's a chick. Made a Wish. Lightning's DLC, quite different. It involves Lightning's endless fights with Caius, very much a follow-up from the prologue earlier. Caius uses an apparition to distract Lightning and bests her, so Lightning jobbed to Caius but still looks strong for her return at WrestleMania 50. She sees Sarah dying in the true ending of the game, so I imagine this DLC came after it. I don't remember how long after though. I can't imagine if you played the full game and then heard there was a DLC and this was all, oh my god. There's like a 9-minute battle with Caius that I skipped through because I was watching it on YouTube, and I'm not paying for this cash grab that should have been in the main game. Anyway, Lightning finds Sarah's soul in Etro's temple, and Sarah's ghost says, "Don't give up, innit? We'll be together again." So Magical Girl Lightning has a little hope now. I will say, the scene where Lightning walks up to Etro's throne to become Crystal Pepsi has Fabula Nova playing, and it's a brilliant scene. And the DLC essentially says, yo, please buy the next game. That's where we'll put the happy ending, we promise. Still, locking it behind story DLC, especially when that DLC is so bare bones, is dog shit. It's anti-consumer. And then there's some boring ass Coliseum DLC where you can unlock characters to use in place of the monster slot, like a cutscene with each one. It's crap. Paradox endings. They don't matter, it's just non-canon stuff to make the game more fun, give you a little bit more to do. It won't be relevant later, but maybe you like the extra stuff. I certainly did. So let's just go through the most interesting ones only, real quick for the hell of it. Because one of them actually clears up something that's left very much in the background otherwise. The first involves defeating Atlas from Brescia 005 AF, but without weakening him, which opens up the Massif, where we see a bunch of giants literally ending the world. It's heavily implied Sarah and Noel die too. Boo! My favourite though is one that clears up what happened to Alyssa. a little more succinctly, and also involves the funniest possible ending, actually. We do Academia for XIII-AF again, that's hard to say, but we don't take the fragment from Alyssa. Snow barges in and stops her. She was working with Caius, and that's why we ended up in the void before. So Snow saves the day, puts Sarah on his bike and says, alright, it's us two now. We're the main characters of the story. And then they just take off. This is the Snow from 13. He's proactive, he sticks with Sarah, and he gets shit done. And it's non-canon. Unless you want to throw some bullshit they're all canon thing at me, in which case fuck off. No. Then Noel's just like, well, I guess I'll just stay here with Hope. He got cucked. Alyssa though, her story is a very sad one. And it gets overshadowed, really, even here. And its resolution in this retro-analysis series of mine is entirely contingent upon whether or not I manage to find her quest in Lightning Returns. She has a quest on that quest board thingy, but if I forget or don't find it, that's Alyssa done. But even then it will be sad. But it does bring to mind a larger problem that I have with this trilogy, and JRPGs in general. And the funny thing is, I've already played Nier Replicant, and I'll be moaning about it then too. Light novels, novellas, drama CDs, stage plays, they all have one thing in common. They're not in the game. I just don't agree with it on a fundamental level. I had to get a CD from Japan once. It cost loads. To expect anyone to go out of their way like this for lore or for story, even if they were fairly priced, even if they do speak the language, is so arrogant and I hate it. I hate it. I fucking hate this shit. It's stupid. The FF13 trilogy is notorious for this shit. Fragments before, fragments after, episode 0. Like every game has a million books attached to it. Put it in the game. There are only 2 paradox endings, I guess, in the end that I found interesting. The rest are on YouTube if you want to go see them. And that'll do it. I guess the prevailing thought in my head when I think of the whole game from a holistic angle is a lack of payoff. The ending isn't the cause of that, but rather a symptom, one of many as it happens, but it was particularly egregious in that it slapped us in the face with the to be continued thingy at the end, literally, which is extra salt in the wound of what is, by definition, a bad ending. Not in that it's badly written, though the argument could certainly be made, and I think it is, but that it's the bad outcome. If I was playing this as it came out and invested all those hours for a bad ending, a terribly hollow secret ending as well, and a buy the next game please at the end, I would have been pissed off. I would have been so pissed off I might not have gotten Lightning Returns. But let's talk the secret ending, since I'm not getting all 160 fragments. If you are insane enough to grab all 160, which means like 100% of every map, which I did get, but also getting the data for every monster in the game, among many other very late game things, you will unlock the secret ending. I was in the 140s for fragments, but then I had a thought pass through me that I imagine is quite common when a game has played so much of a game that their mortality comes into view. Is it really worth it? No, it's not worth it. It's a 1 minute cutscene. It's a 1 minute or so cutscene where Caius gloats over how the goddess is dead. It's a depressing follow-up to an already depressing ending. To be honest, if the original ending didn't piss you off, this might just do the trick. Honestly, it seems like a genuine fuck you to the player, more than a reward. The journey is the destination, but what they don't tell you sometimes is that the destination is the drizzling shits. I found things to enjoy about this game, for sure, but the commonality they all share is that I found them in spite of the general nature of the experience that they all spawn from. This whole playthrough, this whole essay has been nothing short of an exercise in trying to find the best in a bad situation, but FF13-2 is nonetheless a haphazard collection of people, places, phases, and stages, only ever loosely interconnected and called a story. And still I struggle to find a coherent view from which to judge the experience that isn't swimming in a sea of complete fucking frustration. Perhaps it's frustration at what could and should have been. I mean, we delved into that in this video, but it seems antithetical to its predecessor, out of pressure by fans who probably wouldn't have bought the game anyway. But as I sat and watched the Seas of Bodhum for the last time, it sort of clicked, because I went back there after I ended, sort of like how I went back to Solia Springs in 13. It clicked for me that, much like the game's story, my experience with it started out bright and hopeful, but gradually faded until I felt kind of hollowed out. Never felt that with 13. I felt that it became more fulfilling as I went along. With 13-2, they did take things from 13 that were meticulously built up over a 40 to 50 hour game, and then just shredded them to fit their bastardized version of what 13 should be. But I must admit that I do feel as though the experience was a valuable one. The lore is expanded upon, the music is wonderful, the combat's addictive, the characters are alright and good enough, and the world itself is rich in archetypes and variation. There's a fair bit to love about how different 13-2 is to almost anything else in the Final Fantasy chronology, and this is just a side effect of that risk-taking nature. everything good about it and everything bad about it that stands out is because of how much of a risk taker it is. My theory is simple enough. They retconned the ending of 13 to justify a sequel and realised that they could get away with it, but unfortunately whether or not they should do it was something they never asked themselves. But this is business, this is capitalism, sales are sales, and for a hastily scribbled together mess of time puzzles, timelines and paradoxes, I do look back fondly on my experience with the time fixers, even if they were so bad at it that we got a bad ending, and then another secret bad ending right after that, with the 100% of the game. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think 13-2 is a very good game, but it's not terribly shite either. It's just good enough. It's just alright. Time fixers.
I implore you to reconsider.